like I just managed to escape a dangerous situation. I had just turned 16, which is kind of a big deal, and instead of being at home celebrating with my friends, I was stuck in a town hundreds of kilometers away from them. It is a beautiful, vibrant town, I just didn't know anyone there, except for Dave. He was 21 years old, and he was the only one I did know there, but even then, I didn't know him that well. I had met him once when he was visiting my hometown, but I was lonely, and as a 16-year-old, spending your birthday alone is literally the worst thing, so I was desperate to have some fun. Dave invited me to go to an overnight trance festival with him and his friends. At first, my mom was completely against the idea, but Dave agreed to meet up with my family, and I pretended to know him a lot better than I actually did. He was a very mild-mannered and charming boy, and this, coupled with the fact that my mom felt bad for my 16th birthday being so shitty, was enough to convince my mom to let me go. I was extremely excited. It was my first festival, and it was with older guys. It was going to be the best birthday ever. The festival was being held in the middle of a wooded area about an hour's drive away from where I was staying with my parents. This is relevant later on in the story. I had never met Dave's friends, but they seemed okay. This one guy made me feel a little uncomfortable. He kept on looking at me like I was food. We'll call him Mike because I don't even remember his name. I wasn't going to let that ruin my evening though. The night started with us smoking some weed, which I was no stranger to, and then they convinced me to snort some MDMA. It was my first time, but like I said, I was no stranger to drugs, so I obliged. We then went to the dance floor, and I had an absolute blast. I was way too high to care about anything else but the music and the way it felt to move my body. I started to feel a little overwhelmed being in the thick of it, so I moved off to the side where I could still hear and dance to the music, but be a little bit more chilled. I slowly became aware of a conversation taking place behind me. These people were saying pretty odd things. The first guy says, "See that girl? She's one of my girls. She knows how to treat you right. Just see how well she moves." The second guy says, "Yeah, she does look good." The first man then goes on to describe all the things his girl can do. Some pretty intense sexual things. I was like, man, this girl sounds hardcore. I even looked around to try and spot her, and there were a couple ladies nearby, but I had no idea of knowing which one it was, so I just carried on dancing. After a while, the first man encouraged the other to go and dance with this girl, and she would give him, quote, a taste of what she can do. And to my surprise, this man comes up and tries to start dancing with me. I stopped dead, looked at him, and then turned around to see who was calling me his girl. And there's Mike, standing and leering at me. I'm standing there in shock when Dave rushes over and whispers, "We have to go," and pulls me off the dance floor. I go with him, thinking of him as my savior, and he takes me over to some jungle gyms overlooking the festival. I managed to find a comfortable corner of the jungle gym and was just enjoying the evening air, the fire dancers, and the distant dance floor when I spot Mike fairly close by in an animated conversation with the guy from earlier. The guy finally hands over some money as I was trying to figure out what was going on when Dave and his friends come over to the place I was happily ensconced. They surround me and offer me a line of something. I ask what it is, but they won't tell me, so I decline. There are 4 of them standing very, very close to me, completely trapping me as I have a pole at my back. One of them is shining a torch in my face, and they will just not take no as an answer. They badgered me for what felt like 10 minutes before I finally gave in. As soon as I had taken the line, Dave says we should head to the car. I was already way too suspicious to ever want to go to the car, so I asked if I could just go and dance real quick and then I'd go with them. I ran off to the dance floor, pretending to be excited to get dancing, and pushed my way right into the thick of the crowd. From there, I worked my way to the front and then slipped into the surrounding woods. I hid behind the closest tent and tried to plan out what to do next, when my phone blew up with texts and calls from them asking where I was. I had literally been gone for like 2 minutes. Why were they so worried? I began moving stealthily from one tent to the next, hiding between trees and being extremely paranoid. As I was switching between hiding places, I heard 2 guys approaching, so I dove into some bushes. I had no idea who they were, and I was about to ask them to help me when I heard one describing my exact outfit and description to the other. I was so scared. I had never seen these two amongst the group I was with. How did they know who I was and why were they looking for me? I just had no idea what to do. I was scared that if I phoned my mom, I would get into huge trouble, and who knew how long it would take for her to get here. I had no idea who to trust and no plan. I just continued moving through the woods, feeling helpless and terrified when I spotted a campfire. I ran towards it, and when I emerged, there was a group of about 15 very high-looking hippies jamming to some music and having a good time, so I sat with them. They welcomed me warmly and let me sit with them for the remainder of the night. I didn't tell them what was going on. I wasn't sure I even believed it myself. After a few hours, Dave finally found me and tried to get me to leave with him. I refused, so he just sat there until sunrise. I then called my mom to come and get me, as I didn't want to call her at an ungodly hour. I went home and never spoke to Dave again. So that's the night I was saved by some random hippies in the woods. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to quickly share with you guys some things that are going on in the future. So for one, there's going to be a huge collaboration video with at least 12 other horror-related YouTubers. The collaboration video will be going up on Rob Dyke's channel in the future. I don't know how much else I'm able to talk about, but yeah, that's happening. Make sure you're following me on Twitter for more updates on that and just everything else in general. Also, that new shirt design I was talking about got done. Here's what it looks like. I'll have the link for it in the description along with the artist's information, who you should definitely follow. Anyways, that's it. I hope you liked the video. I made a few slight changes to visuals and tried to choose a different type of music at some parts. If you caught that and enjoyed it more than the usual stuff, please let me know. Stay safe and have an awesome day. I'm a 24-year. I was 15 at the time and in the capital city of Kansas. Don't even start with the Wizard of Oz jokes. I was hanging around a group of people I regularly hung out with at the time. The day was slow and cloudy, like really dark type cloudy. We actually had a huge storm the night after or some shit like that. But anyways, with it being such a slow day, we really wanted to get fucked up. We were at my friend's house. For the sake of the story and protection of my friends, let's just call him Tyler. Well, anyways, we were at Tyler's house. Tyler, our friend Josh, and I decided we should go get some weed and a little extra hardcore shit on the side. Coke. It was mostly for Tyler, as he was into the more hardcore types of drugs. We hit up our dealer and did the usual and let him know what we were looking for. Turns out, he hadn't upped his supply recently and we had to go through one of his contacts, which was immediately sketchy as fuck, as I only like going through people I know personally. It's really just a matter of not being ratted out or some bullshit like that. We got his contact info, hit him up, and oh boy, lucky us, he had exactly what we were looking for. So we set our deal up, and by that point it was super late at night. I honestly just wanted to get high and get the fuck home. We decided that the poorly lit skate park a few blocks from Tyler's place would be a wonderful spot to meet up. We took our time to get there, as we had a bad rep around that part of town. To sum up why we had a bad rep, we stole a fuckload of fireworks a few 4ths ago and the cops came into the neighborhood and busted all of us. Anyways, back to the story. We eventually get there and we had to wait for the guy to show up, which is immediately more sketchy, as I like for my dealer to be there at the same time as I am. Eventually, a blacked out vehicle with no lights on rolls up behind the park and a group of people step out of it. We wait in the skate park for them to get up to where we were sitting, which is also the area with the least amount of light. A man stepped up to us first, who must have been the dealer, and he was dressed in dark clothing. In fact, from what we had seen back when they first got out, they all were. Just as we were about to trade off, His group of friends, who we obviously weren't paying enough attention to, managed to sneak up behind us and placed objects which we all described as what felt like a gun onto us and told us to empty our pockets. We were being fucking robbed. I knew the whole thing was a sketchy ass thing to do, but we set up the deal anyways. They took Tyler and Josh's phones and wallets, which were loaded with info and cash. And now, I was the center of the fucking freak show at the circus. I told them I had nothing in my pockets, which I didn't. I don't take valuables to deals. Only money, and that's if I'm the one carrying it. As they're all surrounding me, getting ready to beat the fuck out of me, Tyler attempts to disarm one of their weapons and fails, which results in him being stabbed. They then fled and left us all there. Josh and I had to help Tyler to his house and called 911. We said it was an incident in the kitchen. I found out a few days later that their phones were sold and people started coming to Tyler's house at strange hours. I was 15 Tyler has since moved, and Josh has ended up in prison for a situation he shouldn't have been involved in. I haven't talked to any of them in over 3 years. Moral of the story, don't go to deals that you don't trust yourself. Or, you could just not go to deals at all. I'm a 17-year-old Hispanic female, but at the time that this happened, I was 14 and this took place in Texas. I had recently gotten out of a mental health hospital and was diagnosed with chronic depression, bulimia, and body dysmorphia. The only way I felt loved or appreciated was by having sex with older men and doing drugs. It was summer and I was about to start high school. I was invited to a party with some of my older friends, Vanessa, Callie, and Jackie. I knew my mom wasn't going to let me go to a party after I got caught having sex with a 20-year-old at my cousin's quinceañera, so I lied and said I was going to spend the night at one of my friends' houses. She let me go, seeing as I hadn't left the house since I got back from the hospital, and even let me stay with my friend for 2 days. I thanked her and went to my room to get my stuff ready. A few hours later, my friend Vanessa picked me up and my mom gave me $45 just in case we went shopping or we wanted to order a pizza or something. As soon as I got in her car, I smelled weed. She smiled at me with low, red eyes and threw me a pack of strawberry swishers and some weed, then told me to roll one for us. I did, and we went to pick up my other friends. After we got Jackie, we went to Callie's house to get dressed and then we were on our way. I was pretty high and didn't realize that we had left town and we were going to Dallas. When we got there, I found it odd that it was just me, my 3 friends, and Jackie's boyfriend, who was 21 and she was 17. I didn't say anything, thinking more people were probably just coming later. At the time, all I had really done in the past was smoke weed and drink. My friends knew that, so they told me I didn't have to do anything else if I wasn't ready. But I wanted so bad to seem cool in front of them and Jackie's boyfriend. Plus, I was getting bored just sitting there drinking while Callie and Vanessa were snorting coke. They told me that they had a dealer that gave them an 8-ball for a pretty cheap price. They called up the guy and said that they could meet up at his place since he was on house arrest. We got into Quan's car, which is Jackie's boyfriend, since he had a van and we could all fit inside of it. We were on our way and Callie was rolling up another blunt. I got higher than I've ever been in my entire life. They told me that this was the strongest strain they ever had too, and to just relax so nobody would trip out. I was giggling at nothing. My entire body felt like I was vibrating and I felt like we were floating. When we got there, I could barely walk. My legs felt like jello, so Callie helped me walk since she needed help walking too. We knocked and went inside. I think there were around 6 guys, all in their mid-20s. One caught my attention. He looked out of place. He was dressed way better than the other guys and was very attractive. I guess he noticed me too and came up and started talking to me. He asked me what my name was and my age. I told him the truth and his eyes got big. I felt awkward and asked him how old he was. I'm 24, but don't worry, I'm not a pedo, he said with a chuckle. I didn't care since I had been with 20-year-olds before. I looked over at my friends and they were all laughing and talking to the guy who was on house arrest, but I didn't pay attention. The guy asked me if I wanted to sit down on the couch with him. My legs still felt like jello, so I nodded and sat down. He sat down next to me and said, "I'm Kodak, by the way." I smiled and he scooted closer. I guess he noticed that I was tensing up and he said, "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I just think you're a fine little Spanish girl." I felt myself blush and I said, "No, it's okay. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm just really high and I feel like time is going in slow motion." He laughed and I felt stupid for saying that. "Do you want to go to my room and lay down for a sec?" I said sure, not wanting to make a fool out of myself in front of the other guys there. I told my friends I'll be back and they said okay and kept talking and laughing. I was holding on to the wall and he said, "Don't worry, baby girl, I got you," and grabbed me by the waist and took me to his room. I sat on his bed and he sat next to me. I could tell he wanted to kiss me by how close he was to my face and his hand rubbing on my thigh. I really wasn't in the mood for more than kissing, so I just kissed him hoping he would be satisfied with that and let me rest. He stood up and I thought that was it. My eyes were very low, so I didn't notice him taking off his shirt until I heard his belt being undone. I looked up at him and he smiled at me. I couldn't understand what was going on. I wanted to say no, but I couldn't. He took off my pants and got on top of me. He kissed me and was touching me. As soon as he tried unbuttoning my jeans, I screamed. He put his hand over my mouth and my friends were too busy laughing in the living room so nobody heard me. He told me to shut up or he was going to shoot my brains out. I bit his hand and he hit the side of my head with something hard. This is where I blacked out for a few minutes or seconds, I couldn't tell. I woke up only to see him putting on a condom and being almost completely naked. He didn't know I was conscious again and I got up and tried to run, but my underwear was still around my ankles. He saw me get up and tried to run after me, but he was looking for something in the covers. I managed to pull up my underwear and grab my jeans and ran out screaming. My friends were in shock, and the guy who was on house arrest was too. They all paused to look at me and I told them he tried to rape me. He came out of his room, stumbling over my shoes, wearing only black gym shorts and socks. That's when we all ran for the door and went outside. Quan grabbed his keys out of his pocket and we all jumped in. Callie was the last one to get in, and as soon as she closed the door, we heard 2 gunshots and bolted out of there. I was crying hysterically and they were trying to calm me down. We drove fast, and when we were at a stoplight, something hit us from the back. It was Kodak and his friends with guns out of their black car. They had been following us without their headlights on. I screamed at Quan to hurry, and he did. We swerved and ended up losing them on a busy street. "Let's just go back to my house and you girls can go home. I'll switch cars and follow behind you guys just in case," said Quan. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted to go back to Vanessa's house and sleep everything off. We got to his house and Callie, Jackie, and I went into Vanessa's car while he switched cars into an old beat-up black Acura. Quan followed us home and, thankfully, the other guys didn't follow us. We took the long way back to Arlington and took a lot of turns just in case. Quan stayed with us since it was around 2 a.m. and he was tired. We got into Vanessa's house and, being the hippie she is, she made some lavender and chamomile tea. We went to Vanessa's room upstairs so that we wouldn't wake up her parents, and they asked me what happened. I told them everything, and then Quan said, "I know why they followed us." We all looked at him as he pulled out what looked like an ounce of cocaine from his hoodie. He had apparently slipped it in his pocket while they all turned around to look at me when I came out screaming. "You dumbass, we could have gotten killed," said Jackie. He had just stolen a ton of money's worth of cocaine. That's why they went after us. We got calls and threats for weeks because of that. It eventually stopped when Jackie called and left an anonymous tip to the police and they got arrested. To this day, I haven't told my parents what happened. I still have nightmares about that night.
The enemy controls most of the strategic zones.
This story took place many years ago. My brother used to be a big-time drug dealer. If he didn't sell what you wanted, he knew someone who could get you what you wanted. He had a contact in Mexico who said he could hook him up with a well-known former Sitzerverneck member out of Arizona. He was supposed to be in the secret witness program, but was no longer a part of it. My brother called the number given to him, and the man on the phone requested a very large amount of ecstasy pills. My brother had to make a call, but was sure he could get it for him. After a few more phone calls, my brother had secured the deal. He would make a set large amount of money in the process as well. 2 days later, the son and a friend of the former gang member flew in, and my brother met up with them. As they're driving to the Connect's house, they informed my brother that there was a change in plan. They tell my brother that they have no intention of paying for the pills and my brother is going to help them, or else. They then explained the plan to my brother. They arrived at the house and found the Connect along with his grandma there. The son pulled out a gun and told the Connect to have a seat next to his grandma. They told my brother to tie them both up. He did, but he gave a look to the Connect to let him know that he wasn't doing this willingly. When he tied them up, he made sure to tie the Connect up real good, but not the grandma. He whispered to her that she was going to be okay, but to sit still. The son told the Connect to tell him where the ex was. He told the son to go fuck himself. The son laughed and asked again. Again, he told the son to go fuck himself and laughed. The son was not happy with this, so he ordered my brother to hit him. My brother knew he had to, so he hit him hard. He busted the guy's nose and blood sprayed everywhere. My brother felt bad but knew that it had to be real or else he'd suffer the same fate. The son asked the Connect one more time, "Where's the ex?" He told him to go suck his friend's dick. This time, the son pulled a gun out, told my brother to shoot him and handed him the gun. My brother told the son, "Look, if we kill him, we'll never find the pills." The son said, "We won't be killing him. You will, and if you don't, we'll kill you. Do you understand? What's it gonna be? Kill or be killed?" Just then, the grandma saw her chance and hauled ass out of the front door. They told my brother to go grab her. He went after her but ensured that she kept ahead of him. As soon as she was far enough out and screaming for help and my brother saw that she was going to be okay, he ran to his car and got out of there and didn't look back. He came home, packed a bag, told us what had happened, and then left town. I had always stayed out of his business. I absolutely hated what he did. And now something serious had happened and I was sure it would come to our house. I became paranoid. Every car I heard outside became their car coming to kill us. I knew who these people were and killing us would be nothing to them. After about a week of nothing but paranoid sightings, my brother came home. The first night he was home, we were all mostly relaxed. I say mostly because after all of this, I was never relaxed. At about midnight, we all went to bed. I finally fell asleep after about an hour. I hadn't been asleep very long when I was jarred awake by a loud crash and then yelling. I ran into the living room only to see fire. My mom and I got it put out. That's when we realized that it appeared someone threw a Molotov cocktail at our big living room window. I started to call 911, but my brother made me hang up. He said that I couldn't call. That's when I knew I couldn't live here anymore. Our lives would always be in danger. I moved out a week later. My brother was arrested for sales shortly thereafter and, to be honest, I felt relieved. It sounds stupid, but in my mind he was safer in prison. However, 3 months after starting his sentence, said gang member was arrested for a large ecstasy ring. I was scared that they would end up in the same prison, but thank God that they didn't. My brother has been out of the drug dealing business since his release many years ago. I still look over my shoulder, worried that one day they'll get even. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to mention a few things before the video ends. In the near future, when I hit 400,000 subscribers, I'm going to be doing a Q&A live stream. Due to the chat being filled with thousands of people during the last live stream, I'm most likely going to gather the questions via a hashtag on Twitter. So please make sure you're following me on that, and I'll also link it in the description. I was also going to let you guys know that I plan on doing certain video topics soon. Ones that haven't really been covered much. These topics include war stories, stories of people being saved by animals, stories in the perspective of the stalker, Pokemon Go stories, alien stories, weird things like that. So I ask that you please send in any stories that you might have that relate to those things. The email to send them to is corpsehusbandstories@gmail.com, and it will also be in the description. Make sure you make the subject of the email what kind of story it is so I can organize things better. Any pictures or proof relating to the story that you send me is highly appreciated and will remain anonymous unless specified. If I don't receive enough stories on the topics I just listed or any that I can verify as legitimate, I will probably just poll the next video on Twitter or something. Also, I'm always looking for more thumbnail artists. So if you think you can do art for the thumbnails of my videos, please email. This story is a little bit different. In this particular story, I was on the other end. I was the creeper. I see so many stories posted where someone gets creeped on, but I thought I'd break the mold a little bit and post my story. Maybe seeing through the eyes of the creeper and gaining a little understanding into the mindset of a person committing these acts would be a welcome perspective shift. I'll start with a little background on me so you can understand the type of person I am. I didn't have a traumatic childhood. I was never abused, neglected, or any of the stereotypical serial killer stuff. In fact, it was quite the opposite. If anything, my family gave me too much and was overly protective. I think this is actually what led to my issues. I was never allowed to go to other kids' houses unless my mother had met their parents first, which led to me being left out of a lot. I never really learned how to relate to other people, and I'm socially awkward and have anxiety issues to this day anytime I have to deal with anyone I don't know that well. As far as looks go, I know people tend to expect creepers to be overweight balding guys with thick glasses and bad skin. You know, the typical 40-year-old basement dweller. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I've always been told I'm a decently attractive guy. In short, relationships have always been a huge struggle for me. However, I am still a human being, and I still have a need for attention and affection. The problem is, I'm like a dog chasing a car. I don't know what to do with it when I finally get it, and it usually ends in pain. Anyway, on to the actual story here, since I know you're not all listening to this just to listen about my depressing life history. I was in my early 20s, just after college. The local rock radio station I listened to got a female DJ who was on during the time I was usually listening to the radio. She seemed cool, played a lot of stuff I liked, and was fun to listen to, so I would tune in pretty much every night. She would occasionally talk a little bit about her personal interests, and I shared most of them. She liked video games, comic books, rock music, obviously, and other somewhat nerdy, especially for a girl, things. I was eventually convinced that we had so much in common that she was the perfect girl for me. I followed her on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, pretty much every social media page she had, even tracking down her personal Facebook and not just the public one she advertised on the radio. I talked to her through social media whenever I could think of something to say, which most of the time just ended up being song requests, but she was always friendly and even gave me a shout out on the air one night. I know I'm sounding really creepy, but I swear my intentions were 100% innocent at this point. I really just liked this girl a lot and wanted to get to know her, but had no idea how to go about it. I started to go to every concert the radio station sponsored, which in our smaller town were not very big or very often. We don't have any kind of arena or anything, so they were all at bars with a few hundred people at most. We got some nationally known bands, but nothing major. They were mostly up-and-coming bands or bands who were past their prime. The biggest thing they had was in a field behind a bar with a couple thousand in attendance. Anyway, she was also there, of course, since she worked for the station, and because the concerts were so small, I would always see her. I could never work up the guts to go talk to her because, at this point, I had put her on this pedestal in my mind, and I just couldn't talk to her unless I was sure I would say the right things. I couldn't have her first impressions of me being anything less than perfect. So most of the time, I just got drunk and talked to whoever was near me instead. After a while of this, I ran into a guy I worked with at one of the concerts. I was already pretty drunk at that point, so I ended up telling him that I liked this girl, but I was too afraid to talk to her. His response was to drag my drunken self up to her and strike up a conversation. When I'm drunk, I am actually pretty outgoing, so surprisingly things went well and I left very excited about everything. I sent her a message on Facebook a couple days later and she remembered me, which was really encouraging, and I ended up asking her if she'd like to hang out sometime. She agreed and I nearly broke my desk, I was so excited. Because she worked nights on the radio as well as a second job, apparently 4 hours a night on a small town radio station doesn't pay the bills, I ended up meeting her for lunch at the mall on her break. Lunch didn't go so well. My sober self clearly wasn't as charming as my drunken self, and things were rather quiet and awkward. In desperation, I started talking about all the things we had in common, and eventually I got really desperate and told her I thought I might be falling for her. In hindsight, probably not the best thing to say to a girl who just met you and she was understandably creeped out. She politely excused herself to go back to work, and I sat there wanting to smash my head onto the table. I knew I had blown my chances with her. Instead of admitting defeat though, I just had to keep on trying. I messaged her on Facebook about 1,000 times over the next couple of weeks. I was apologizing for coming on too strong and trying to get another shot. She responded a few times and was polite, but a lot less friendly than before. Eventually, she blocked me, and looking back, I can't say I blame her. At the time, though, I was distraught. Then my sadness turned to anger. At first, I was angry at myself more than anything, but then I started thinking things like, I was never anything but nice to her. Why can't she just get to know me? I decided I needed to talk to her in person again, but she was clearly not going to meet me at this point. So I would hang around her store in the mall, but I always seemed to miss her. After thinking about it today, I suspect they probably sent her to the back to hide when they saw me coming. But at the time, I just thought she must work a different schedule every day. Finally, I waited for her after work at the radio station. This was my worst idea yet. As I mentioned, she was on the air at night, so it was after midnight when she came outside and got in her car to go home. I followed her. Even